plow through some of these and give you a good idea of what's going on. Okay, so for this domain with the Security Plus, they've changed it and actually made it a little bit more prevalent. So it's nearly 1/4 of, for the 601, going to be 1/4 of the entire exam. And it's important for you to understand that these things are real. They're real and they are out there. We had a new customer. They were not, I want to make sure we're clear here. They were not a customer and they became a customer recently, last month, because they suffered a ransomware attack. And if you've never seen something like that, I'm going to explain that here in a few. But we are seeing a significant increase, especially now that everybody's working remotely, with attacks on corporate networks. So it's a heightened sense of security right now, based off of what we're seeing in the marketplace. You know, and it's kind of interesting, you know, being a novice historian myself, I try to think about, you know, medieval times and how some of the wars of yesteryear were fought. If you're not a fan of some of those times, then maybe I can liken it to something else. But usually it would be the wars that we used to fight would be done during daylight hours, whether that's hand-to-hand combat and, you know, bludgeoning somebody upside the head or cutting their head off or whatever we're trying to think of in the medieval times. Any general that would command an infantry or hand-to-hand combat knew that if you fought battle at nighttime, it was just way too risky. So because of that, you typically would wait until, you know, the sunrise or you know, figuring out where the right place to have a skirmish was, or maybe you had the strategic advantage, or maybe you were waiting for reinforcements. So, you know, those are the types of the wars that we used to fight. If there were bridges or detours, those things would be noted. If there were people that were wounded or killed on the battlefield, they would have to be removed from the battlefield at nighttime typically. And a lot of times, you know, we could somewhat predict, or history tells us they could somewhat predict. Well, nowadays, that just doesn't work anymore. Now we have very sophisticated adversaries that are out there who are 24/7, strategically trying to get on different networks all across the world. They're using things that either are homegrown tools that they own or tools that they've become very, very good using to find vulnerabilities. Also, they plant people in certain companies that have insider threats and espionage. And also, misconfiguration is a really, really big deal. Misconfiguration of assets on corporate networks is a big deal. And so the battle line now has gone from, you know, way back when to just shooting people in different skirmish lines, and maybe, you know, trench warfare to, you know, now it's all electronic. And some people predict that the next war, which will come sooner or later, will be won based off of who has the biggest cyber weapons that are out there. There's some very good websites that you may or may not be familiar with that you may want to take a look at. One of them is the FireEye, and it's a threat map. And the FireEye threat map is kind of cool. I'll put it up here on the share screen. They are a services company that does a lot of cool things all around the nation and all around the world. But they put together this thing, and how real time it is, I don't know. But if you've never seen this before, it's FireEye.com, and then it's their cyber map. You can go check that out. But essentially, they show where all the attacks are coming or that are reported to be coming from. And it's pretty relevant here because the United States seems like it's the primary target. I mean, that's what it is. And it's kind of interesting that the majority of these are not coming from the United States. They're coming externally. Some of them actually come from the United States, but the question for legality and being able to do that, to retaliate, is that's still something that is kind of gray right now. And so, like Russia, North Korea, China, you can see it yourself, but essentially this is what we see. There's a lot of attacks going on each and every day. And when I first started getting into the business, what we typically would see is we would have to make the screen's not shared on the WebEx. Okay, let me make sure I'm doing it. Sorry about that, guys. Thank you for letting me know. Here's the cool Leo right here. When I was first getting into business, what we would have to do is we would have to justify the cyber security team or the information security team. Like, why is it relevant? And so a lot of the metrics that were coming to life at the time were non-existent. So we would have to put tools in place to show how many attacks would be thwarted based off of the tools that we have. And with the sophistication of the tools as well as the attackers, we've seen a significant increase in the amount of attacks, especially over the last 8 years. And why is that? Why does anybody think the past 8 years it's really grown significantly? Cloud? Good, cloud. That wasn't the answer I was looking for, but okay. Yeah. What else? Okay. Yeah, more in depth in the technology than we ever had before. So everybody's got something, right, that they're using. Yeah. Well, around that time was right around when Android started to also become a little bit more prevalent. But also a lot of the tools out there now to perform attacks are much, much easier to use than they ever have been. So instead of people, and I hear it all the time, that people are afraid of the command line, which is okay because they can keep me gainfully employed for the next 30 years. But because of that, GUIs have been created, graphical user interfaces, and applications where you can point and click and launch an attack on somebody with just a couple points and clicks. And because of that, the amount of script kiddies that are out there, people that can launch an application and go to a couple of sub-menus and point at an IP address and just let it kind of go. If you went out and asked Dr. Google or went out to YouTube, you'd see a ton of those that are demos that are out there of people going through and looking at different networks. So there's a number of different reasons. The number of people have used it. The cloud has contributed to it, but also the tools are so much easier now than ever to use that, we run a cyber camp in the summertime, and some of those 12 and 14-year-old kids that are coming in are pretty dang sharp. They're pretty dang sharp. They know how to run tools, and they can probably run circles around many of us that are out here. All right. So that's important because there's a lot of things that are going on with the attacks that are out there. And it starts with this umbrella term that we'll go ahead and kind of utilize here called malware. And you may be familiar with that, but if not, then I'm going to decompose it for you. It's pretty easy. It stands for malicious software, right? And there's a whole bunch of things that are qualified underneath malware, and that includes what you see up here on the screen. One of the most interesting ones, in my opinion here, my little thing down, my opinion, is this worm right here. The worm, we haven't seen a really nasty one come out in a while, But the difference between a virus and a worm is self-replicating, whereas a virus needs a host to infect. Well, what does that mean? That means that the worm doesn't have to be attached to a file. It just needs an open network connection to something. And it's very tricky to contain a worm. But here is a keyword that I want you to make sure that you look at. And let's just talk about this here for a second. What does the word exploitation mean? Well, underneath it here, we got it, gain unauthorized access to system resources. Well, in order for us to exploit something, we have to know what a vulnerability is, right? So let's say that I'm going to go and Aditi and I are going to be in a mixed martial arts fight. We're going to go into the octagon, right? You versus me. She'd probably whoop my ass, right? But if I'm her opponent, I'm going to try to find, within the first 20 to 30 seconds of us finding ourselves inside of that ring, I'm going to see, is she left-handed or right-handed? Is she limping? Does she got something I can pull, like the long hair? I'm going to try to find, potentially, a hole in her defenses that I can begin to pick on. She's got a scab, I'm going to pick at it, right? But I'm trying to find a vulnerability. And so when we go out and do these assessments on people's networks, first thing we do is a vulnerability assessment. We've got to find where those scabs are. We've got to find if they got the hair that we can pull. Right? We've got to find those open holes that are on the network, and we do that by running scanners and figuring out what ports and protocols are open on their network. And so in that metaphor, being able to look at the person that you're up against and figuring out where their deficiencies are, well, if we start to kick at a leg, now that person's limping on the leg, I'm keeping going after the leg, right? I'm going to keep going after it. So if we find a vulnerability, now we're going to exploit the vulnerability. And so a lot of times people get confused with this term, but it is used throughout our profession by security experts, because that is the thing that as security professionals we do. Look for vulnerabilities and we figure out how can we patch those vulnerabilities. We do gap assessments, which means this is where you're supposed to be, this is where you are, how did you get to where you need to be? Typically with Microsoft, you hear about Patch Tuesdays. We had a big one this past Tuesday. Every Tuesday they launch patches. Those patches are typically from zero-day exploits. Now, as a EC Council certified ethical hacker instructor, master instructor, I can tell you that EC Council has done a lot of research on that, on 0 days. And specifically, they say on average, based off the research that they've done, that a 0-day exploit typically goes unnoticed in the wild for 72 days. 72 days. 0 day.
How is it?
So a 0 day is a piece of malicious software or malware that does something nefarious on a machine. And really, until it's found, you don't really know what it is. But it's kind of like with viruses, when it's found, that becomes the day 0 that it's found. So we call it an O day or 0 day. And that's going to be from then till 72, from the day it's launched till 72 days. That's typically the time that it's out in the wild before it's discovered. So think about that. 72 days, that's what, that's 2.5 months almost, roughly, right? 2 days, 2.5 months. What didn't I say right there? That's just when it's discovered. What do we got to do? If we have a piece of software that we're writing, or if we're Microsoft, what do we have to do now? Somebody's discovered a vulnerability. We know it can be exploited by the attackers out there. What do we got to do? We got to patch it, right? So the patch just doesn't, we don't pull a rabbit out of the hat and say, boom, here's a patch for it, right? We got to actually patch it. And we got to write the software to actually patch the issue. And so every Tuesday, Microsoft patches their software. And the big transition from any of you guys that are running Windows here, big transition from Windows 7 to Windows 10, and one of the reasons why Microsoft, in at least the first 6 months, made it free was because they wanted to get everybody into the automatic updating of Microsoft patching. Now, you can go in and disable that, but now most people, 90% of the people out there don't know that they can disable it. And instead of it being kicked down the road, like many of our older people that don't know anything about patching, what we typically see is that they just kick the can down the road. They don't want to patch. And what does that mean? That means their machine is now vulnerable to an exploit. So if I run a vulnerability scan on your machine or on your network, it'll come up with all of these vulnerabilities. And then I, as a security expert, will go through and say, let's see if we can use that one to get on their machine. And in that case, I don't need remote desktop. I can just use that exploit to go and get access control to your machine. I don't even need a user ID and password. It's an exploit that I can circumvent any access control, any authentication, and I can be on your hard drive lickety-split using tools like, I'm going to write it on here, like Metasploit. Metasploit is an open source tool that is part of it's an application that's part of another tool that is an operating system that if you're interested in playing around with some of the hacking tools, there's one that's out there called Kali Linux. And we're actually going to play with that later part of next week. We're going to spin it up and actually play around with Kali Linux. So we'll mess around with some of the tools. But Metasploit is just like the second half of the word here, it actually will scan and figure out which exploits, which patches have not been done on your computers. So if I had Metasploit on my computer right now, I could scan each one of your computers, figure out which patches have not been patched, and then inside of it, it's got a GUI that I just say, let's see if we can use that one. And then it attempts to try to see if it can pick that scab and then get access to your machine, which typically it can't. And then it's all on like Donkey Kong right after that, right? So from that point on, I mean, why would somebody want to do that? Well, maybe you got some nude photos or something you're keeping on there, or maybe you got some credit card information. Usually it's money, something to deal with money. Yeah.
So if you were to take the can down the road, not after your system, but you still have your hard drive encrypted, would that still, there's still probably an exploit even though your stuff is encrypted? Or?
That's a great question. So in that scenario, the encryption of the hard drive is only when it's off, right? Yeah. Typically, the encryption of the hard drive is when it's off. When it's on, you're logged in as a user, so everything on your hard drive now becomes available to you. So if your machine is on, then that's going to be unencrypted. If it's off, then yeah, you're in good shape. But if you have an exploit, or if you have a Windows machine, typically it's Windows. We've seen a lot of attacks on Android devices. Not so much for all you iPhone or Mac folks that are out there. But typically on a Windows machine, if you kick that can down the road, every Tuesday they're releasing new patches that typically forces a restart. And any one of those could lead to somebody gaining an administrative access to your machine. And it's kind of neat if you've never done it before. If you've never done it before. So Metasploit will actually look at the different patches, and it crafts the exploit for the patch. And what it does is it'll take remote control of your machine, and then it will, it's almost like a Trojan, it will hide itself in a system process. So the system process. So like if I launch Windows Explorer and I bring up the just an Explorer window. And let's say I wanted to bring up this Explorer window right here. This Explorer window has a process that something like the software like Metasploit would do, is it would take over that Windows Explorer so you wouldn't even know that it's running on your machine. It wouldn't say Metasploit's running in system processes. It would take over a known process, like this right here in your processes. I have all these things running. It would take over a known process that I have on my machine, like Windows Explorer, and just hide behind that. And so antivirus will catch it if it's up to date. If the antivirus is up to date, it'll catch it. But if you don't have a patch and you're running an antivirus, then, I mean, it's 50-50. You might as well coin flip that. But it's kind of neat if you've never seen that, and we'll play around a little bit with that because you will have a question on your exam on Metasploit and it being an exploitation tool, software exploitation tool. Okay?
Hey, Ben, may I jump in?
Yeah, you go right ahead.
So you're actually beginning to see an uptick in Mac and iOS devices being targeted. I was reading reports earlier this week from USA Today, Forbes, and Sophos that in the past year, exploits on Mac devices have increased by 400%. So there's presently a few stats that might give the impression that a Mac device is about twice as likely to have an exploit than a Windows machine.
Well, thank you for sharing that. That's a game changer for those high on the hog MacBook users that are out there.
It'll kick them in their ivory tower.
Oh, wow. Hopefully it doesn't hurt anybody. All right, great job, Andrew. Thank you. Let's keep on trucking here. I've still got a lot of things that I want to try to cover. And we'll probably take a quick 5-minute break here in a few minutes. So we talked a little bit about the Trojan, and here I have the silly little drawing of the Trojan. But this is kind of neat if you've never seen it before, and I hope that you don't mind me just being able to draw here, because that's one of the things that I enjoy doing is just trying to teach through drawing. So in telling stories. So what I like to do is typically what we'll see now with some of these more sophisticated Trojans that are out there is, let's say that you have a phone. All of us have a smartphone, right? So this is going to be my little smartphone here, and I got all these different apps that are running on here. Okay. So what this does is this phone will connect to some type of app store that's out there. And we'll just use Google Play for the example. Okay. So out here on the App Store, let's say that we have this thing that's called Angry Birds. Right? So Angry Birds out here will be something that, you click on your device, it goes out to the App Store, you type it in, and you can download it. Well, what we've seen attackers do is they try to do some sort of typo squatting, and what that means is that instead of Angry Birds, they'll put an app up there that's called Angry, and maybe they got a 1 instead of an I. So an Angry Birds. But it's so subtle that you may not even see it. So what does that mean? They put that up there with the intent to hopefully get a few people to click on it. Well, in a lot of cases, what we're seeing, and Google's doing a better job with managing this now, is the attackers are taking the app from the App Store, the legitimate app from the App Store. They're downloading it to their machine. So let me draw a little hacker here. Draw a little hacker give him a smile here. And he's on his machine. He downloads the app onto his machine. when he downloads it onto his machine, what he's going to do is he's going to put it into a decompiler or sheet, put it into a decompiler, and then when they put it into a decompiler, that brings it up in its code base form on their machine, okay? Once they put it into the decompiler, then they add nasty to it. What's that?
So remember the Android background, most code once you compile it, it's pretty, not gonna do that. Really, is that,
Yep.
oh,
So those APKs, with Android, with APKs, you can get like something like IdaPro, like a decompiler like IdaPro. You can get pretty close to getting that to be a fully executable source code. So looks and feels and smells exactly like, in this case, Angry Birds. So with using a tool like IdaPro, which is a little bit more sophisticated, they can decompile it. They'll add their little nastiness to it and then recompile it. Maybe they'll make a dummy account, and then they'll post it up as Angry Birds with an I or with a 1 up there. So, you know, if your kid or grandma or somebody who's not as savvy as you may actually go out there and see 2 or 3 Angry Birds out in the Play Store or something that looks very similar, and maybe you're going to download one. And if you download it, what does this nasty do? Well, they actually had something similar here, and I can't make this stuff up. You feel free to look it up. But a few years ago, they actually had one that was called Droid Dream. Whoops. Let's see. Okay, Droid Dream. And Droid Dream it was for the porn industry. So I read this. I did not firsthand know about it. But apparently there was an app out there that was, I don't know what it was called, but let's just say in our scenario here, it's kind of like the Angry Birds app, where there were people that like porn would go out, they would subscribe to the Angry Birds app, and for a monthly fee, be able to get unlimited porn. Okay. And what I read at the time, it was $39.99 that would be charged to your Verizon account. I don't know I think it's happened on AT&T, but that's significant here. So check it out. What some people did out there is they downloaded the app, the porn app down here, decompiled it, added the nastiness, which was a 10-cent charge to the Verizon account. A 10-cent charge. Right? How many of you guys look at your Verizon bill every month? Mm-hmm. Maybe you don't have Verizon. But would you notice a 10-cent difference? You probably would be like, oh, I must have gone over. Or maybe I don't know. But a lot of people didn't even notice it. And so I know it sounds a little phallic here when I say it, but in that particular account or that particular accounting of what happened with this malware is over time it becomes what's called a salami attack, and it's not related to the discussion about the porn here. But essentially, the 10 cents here carved up mean nothing to the majority of the people, the 10 cents. But over time, collectively, the sum of the whole ended up being significant amount of money that these guys were able to get prior to being caught, because they usually will get caught. But that is something that we typically will see, especially if you're installing things from third-party app stores or side-loading things on your machine or device. And it can happen even easier on our desktops or our laptops as well. All right, somebody's got a question here. Okay. Any questions about that before I move on?
Were you saying they was charging all Verizon accounts? Or
No.
was it just our card charging accounts that were purchasing?
Just the people that went out there and got the app. Like, let's say somebody was interested in getting that app, they would see one, and then the other one would look very similar. And since this is a bit of a taboo industry, it's kind of like if you're dealing drugs, are you going to ask for the police to go get somebody because they just stole your drugs? I mean, you can't, right? Because then you're kind of giving yourself up. Well, in this particular case, do you really want to call somebody and say, yeah, I downloaded this app, the porn app? I mean, so it went on for a little while before people started getting wind of it. Yes, sir.
So the person who took it and did stuff to it still did the same thing as the other app did, and Verizon still got the money from that person.
Yep.
It had the other one.
Yep.
They just added 10 cents.
Yep.
That one's there.
That's it. Yep. And that's important. The thing that you said is because this right here, this right here, the whole purpose of them doing this down at the bottom is to get it to work exactly like the one that they're trying to copy.
It's just
Just a mirror image. Mirror image. Because if they can do it, then nobody will ask any questions. And if it's only a dime in that particular case, I mean, it really doesn't, it's not significant to one person. So it took them a little while to figure that out. And I think that's been 4 or 5 years since that one actually has come to life, the Droid Crew.
How long did it take them to find out that one?
I want to say close to 18 months before they started to see more and more reports of it coming out. Because until somebody recognizes it, it's a 0 day, right? We would qualify that as a 0 day attack. Until somebody recognizes it and then puts it into another category, and we don't know until we're able to get it. All right, let's take a quick break here. Let's do 5 minutes, 7:23. I'm going to go ahead and start back up at 7:28. If this is your first time here, Trenton, if you don't mind showing people where the bathrooms are, that would be fantastic. But we'll come back in 5 minutes and keep the dream alive for you. Yeah.
We're confused by the class of networks. Like our corporate network will be down in the 10-10 range, of course, that's local. Is this just something that used to be useful and isn't anymore, like class of BCD?
I kind of look at it like that. Yeah, it's more of a way to. Most of the corporate networks are going to be on Class A.
But we don't have that many people.
No. But usually you'll get a slice from an ISP. But if you have a dedicated, usually it's still Class A. I mean, do you guys have a Class A where you're working? Okay. Yeah, usually you don't see Class Bs and Class Cs, but if somebody wants to buy an IP address, a public IP address, those are the different classes of IP.
So everything touching the internet, that would be safe.
You can talk over IP version 4 still.
Of course, there was a scale problem, but I'm kind of confused. There's like way more networks in that world. So everything goes through one IP address, I guess, for a couple to get out to like internet servers.
Usually it's 1 or 2 to get out to the internet, and then everything internally is split up through NAT.
And just
routed internal. Yeah.
And you just have to whatever you do.
Yep, internal. Yes, that's right.
Even with that, they're doing like $4 billion total.
I mean, people thought that we were going to run out. I think that there are some people that think that we will still run, but we haven't.
Well, I don't know. I guess, I don't know. So are some of them on IPv6 or what is the world run on that?
Both the mixed mode, IP version 4 and IP version 6. IANA, if you wanted to learn more about it and do a little bit more research, IANA issues those IP addresses. It's like I don't remember what it stands for, but it's basically the registries and what links IP to DNS. But typically that's what, if you're going to register DNS, you'll get an IP address that's associated with it, and it'll be in one of those classes. I think what I find is that there's a lot of hosting companies that are out there, or providers that are out there, that can split their IP and then give you a piece of the pie, you know?
You got one listener. Yeah. Not being Hagar, you probably listening to it 30%. They got some rating of 90 movie references. We do them all day. Yeah, it's industry driven.
So because we're on your network right now, you were saying like earlier, like we were saying like FTP, you got like somebody else on the network, you can see it, right, if you want to. Could you do like a man-to-man thing, you set up something and change that, or like I'm saying, it seems to me, or like, I'm talking about like getting information from that and seeing something else to the else.
So if you're on my network, I can do anything. If you're on my network, I can do anything. But some of the things are much more difficult to do than others. Typically, for like a man in the middle, you got to figure out how to get in between that node and where it's going. And oftentimes that involves another type of attack, like trying to overwhelm a router to get that router to maybe shut down and then redirect traffic to you. There's a number of different ways you can do that, but if you're sending something over FTP and it's on the same network as me, if I'm sniffing the network traffic, or if I have an intrusion detection system or some sort of monitoring device that is just looking at all the traffic, when you send that unencrypted, then I have a copy of it.
All those that you were talking about, like, those were all examples of the software experimentation.
These right here? Or this one right here?
Yeah, that was the last one.
Yeah. So that would just be qualified as, I mean, most exploits are a piece of software. If they found a vulnerability in an operating system, doesn't matter if it's Windows or Cisco device or Linksys, if there's a vulnerability, then somebody's going to be able to exploit it. Yeah, you absolutely will.
What would you think about the microprocessor architecture? Like the points that came out that we couldn't physically patch or not patch?
Which one are you talking about?
Something with like Intel's actual core processing.
I'm not as familiar with that. We haven't seen anything dealing with that on our commercial side of the house.
They were
Oh, really?
Yeah.
All right, let's keep going here. Keep on trucking. So I was mentioning the Trojan. The logic bomb, usually you'll see that as a question on the exam. And typically what this is maybe you'll have something like a disgruntled employee. Who is anticipating that they're going to get let go, or maybe they think their job sucks and they want to go ahead and based off of something happening, something predetermined, they will create a piece of code that's looking for an if-then-else statement. So logic statement. And what does that mean? That means that if Kelsey wants to leave Bed Bath & Beyond, she is a disgruntled employee. She writes a logic bomb. This is fictitious, by the way. She writes a logic bomb that if she does not log in each day at noon, that the logic bomb kicks off and deletes all accounts on the corporate network. That's just a scenario of what could happen. Essentially, it's an event that's triggered based off of a predetermined task or time, in this case. I think. All right, we mentioned the hooks before and some of that. One of the cool things here that you may have heard of before is this top one, a botnet. And if you're not familiar with that, then I'll try to go through and explain that. But I'll also try to kick this off in the background here. So while I'm talking, I'll just let this play in the background. So a botnet has a couple of different things going on here. It'll have all of these little bots that are over here, each one of these, that have an agent that is running on them. And this botnet herder will create the agent, which is a little tiny piece of software that says for each of these bots at a certain time or a certain day, I'm going to go ahead and be able to control everything that you're doing from a remote location. Typically, that happens over internet relay chat or an IRC tunnel. So if you're not familiar with that, that's basically like instant messaging on a network. So these agents somehow get installed on each one of these machines. These little bad things get put on these machines, and then they beacon back to this herder. And once they are compromised, we end up calling them a zombie. And that's about all I can handle of that song right there. So it's a zombie that ends up being the infected bot that is part of this bigger botnet. So how would that work? And why? What would it do? Aditi, what do you think? Why would this be of interest? Why is this interesting? John, why is this interesting? Why is this interesting?
It's whoever needs or one of the resources for this machine is CPU, RAM,
That's right. So it actually stems from, and you guys probably throughout the course will think I'm making stuff up, There is, no, it's not the Yeti. That's an abominable snowman. There's the SETI project. So the SETI project is the search for extraterrestrial intelligence that you can actually subscribe to still and give your processing power of your machine up at any time during the day to allow the SETI project to search for extraterrestrial intelligence, right? And it's very similar, where just like John said, the botnet herder gets these huckleberries, computers that are out there, to join its botnet with the intent that, let's say they have a target that's over here that at a given time they want to take down this target for whatever reason. And I'll give you an example here in a second. So if I have a website or a store of some kind that if I'm a bad guy and I want to take it down, what I would do is I would create a botnet, and from each one of my bots, as I commanded it, at any time over an IRC tunnel, an IRC chat, I would tell it to launch a DOS attack from each one of these machines to take down the target. So collectively or individually, it would be a DOS attack, a denial of service attack. Collectively, then it takes down this machine or website using all of those resources as a DDoS attack, which is a distributed denial of service attack. Each one of these is called a zombie because it's got an agent that it is controlled on each one of these. Why is this important? Well, you may remember a guy named Julian Assange who owned a website called WikiLeaks. Maybe you've never heard of that before, but if you haven't, then this dude publishes stuff on the website that other people choose not to publish, and sometimes it's popular, sometimes it's not. So it's been a little while since this has happened, but he threatened to publish some classified information or some compromising documents about the United States from a few different things. You can go look it up and read it on his website. And he said, on this day, at this time, we're going to publish these articles out there. And so, you know, the anticipation of the world was thinking, okay, this guy's really going to do this at this time? Well, we have to check it out. So, you know, his traffic was going up through the roof at that time. Well, little did he know that some of the people that we teach here at CyberProtects have technology for the good guys. It's not just used for nefarious reasons, for bad guys to take down websites. Well, guess what? We can take them down too, legally. So conveniently, about an hour before this guy was supposed to go live here on his wikileaks.com or whatever the heck it was called, his website went down. Now, not only was he having probably 40 million people trying to hit his website, but also a bunch of virtual machines that maybe 100,000 virtual machines that were all running different instances of the bot at different times, taking up a massive amount of CPU. It brought that website down to its knees. So much so that Amazon, who runs Amazon Web Services, which is one of the most robust cloud providers in the world, they said, get your stuff off of our network and go somewhere else because we don't want you on here anymore. Julian Assange and WikiLeaks. So in that particular case, that DDoS, that distributed denial of service attack, brought that guy's website down. I think eventually he was still able to post some stuff out there, but in that particular case, that is what happened. So you will absolutely see botnet on your machine, or on your test. And I would encourage you that if I just did not explain that well, you may actually also see the word zombie, which should be equated to a robot network or a botnet. You will not see the word SETI or the search for extraterrestrial intelligence unless you are working for NASA or just a geek like me. So that leads us to this next thing here, which is ransomware. This is a really big deal, because what ends up happening is it encrypts the victim's resources. Then it demands payment to decrypt. Now, we partnered with the Department of Homeland Security and did a bunch of events up in the great state of New York last year on ransomware. And this is the nastiest type of malware that is out there. It is absolutely awful. We've had close to 10 different ransomware over the past 2 years where customers who were not ours came to us with issues that they were having. And typically, ransomware comes from misconfiguration of external device. So what does that mean? That means that a firewall or a remote access server or something that is a company's asset that's on the internet is misconfigured. What do I mean by that? Kelsey, what do I mean by misconfigured?
That the default is changed.
Okay. Brent, what do you think?
Somebody clicked on something they weren't supposed to, and they didn't realize how not to do that. Okay. So when I think of misconfigured, and maybe some of you guys online have a different idea as well, I think of misconfiguration is I turn it over to one of our interns. I tell them to install something for me and get it up and running, and they come back in 10 minutes and say, I got it all running. Oh, okay. What does that mean? That means that they just said next, finish. Well, I could have done that. So what does that mean? That means that it may have blatant holes that are open, and if so, those could be potentially exploited. And so typically that's what we see, is that the misconfiguration of any of these external devices, and it very well may be, I know it sounds awful, default user and password. So that is typically one of the biggest issues that we see for corporate networks being compromised. And you're like, oh, well, you know what, that's not my, I work for a big company okay, for your company, maybe that isn't what we're talking about, but for many others that are out there, there is websites like this that if you think about at your house, what kind of device are you running at your house? Don't say it out loud. Let's say here that it is, I don't know, a Linksys device that's running at your house. So if we come out and use our default passwords database here, blank and admin, we'll try that. Maybe we'll try admin and then no password. Maybe we'll try admin.
Is that a security app?
So what?
I think you use one of that as a security app.
Oh, did I? But we'll try all of these different user IDs and passwords when we're doing a penetration test and when we're doing an assessment on something to see if it's configured that way. And so the attackers know how to do that as well. And typically, they'll find it. And if this is what is protecting you from the internet, then you're probably in trouble.
And this is just a website, this will have username and password.
Yep.
And it's secured.
What's secure?
The website.
I don't know if it's secure. I mean, this is just a database that tells you what are all the different default passwords. Password, right? It's like, we're going to try that. We're going to try PAT-SSW0RD. Right? We're going to try a bunch of derivations of different easy passwords because it might be something of interest. And if we can get on maybe with an SA user and to a SQL Server, which is a database, we literally have the data, which is the keys to the kingdom, and we can do pretty much whatever we want. So with ransomware, what ends up happening is, I'm going to use your scenario earlier where you said if your hard drive's encrypted. Well, that's exactly what it does, is it'll go through and encrypt the hard drive, and then it has the only keys that are out there. Typically, those keys are RSA, which is an asymmetric cryptography, 2048-bit encryption, which mathematicians estimate would take 1 million years crack. So,
The RSA.
yeah, to crack that asymmetric cryptography using 2048-bit encryption. So you're shit out of luck. And we've had a number of cases where, 20, 50, 700 machines on a network have been compromised. And so you cannot get anything off of those machines. Windows will still boot up, but all that, all your documentation that you had on there, it's encrypted now. And so it's pretty much a useless machine at that point. So it's very, very nasty. It's very nasty, ransomware. Good chance that you'll see something on your exam that says almost identical to the definitions here. Encrypts victim resources and demands payment. Those should be keywords that lead you to the water and answer that correctly. The rootkits are another type of malware that we typically will see that hides malicious processes, or it will hide its malicious activities in a process. So I talked about the processes before. What does that mean? That means that here on my machine, I have all these processes that are running by default on Windows, right? All of these things are what's running in the background. So what will rootkit do? It'll hide itself on a machine running in the background and take over one of those processes. Typically it will have root access, which root is pretty much equal to God access. So you can do pretty much anything you want on a machine with root because you're the administrator. Andrew, you want to add anything there, or are you falling asleep on me?
I mean, Ben, you've been killing it tonight.
Oh.
So I know rootkits and ransomware, just from my testing experience, I saw both of those terms on the test. And in my real world experience, rootkits and ransomware have both been the biggest pains in the neck to deal with. In both instances, to recover from those attacks, you're looking at you're gonna have to wipe a hard drive and reinstall the OS.
So, Andrew, do you want to share some of your experiences with, what your test taking was like, and what did you end up? We share with that for a few minutes.
Yeah, sure thing. So, when I was studying for the test, I actually took a ton of time during quarantine whenever things were locked down couldn't go out partying or anything, you know, and ended up hunkering down. Ben, have you told them about the Cyber Ninja yet?
I did. I
Okay.
told them about the Cyber Ninja.
So I know for me, I took, I want to say about 2 months. I ran through boot camp, actually the last night class, and then we had COVID stuff. So I ended up putting it aside for a month or two, picked it back up early summer, and ended up testing and passing. It was a little weird going into the testing center. So right now, CompTIA has allowed you to be able to test remote, but I opted to go into an actual testing center. So right now you have options in terms of flexibility of how you want to take your test. I personally would recommend, if you are able, go to the testing center. I found it wasn't that bad. I mean, they take your temp at the door, and you have to keep the mask on. When you go through the test, you've got, I want to say you've got about 90 questions. And the first batch of questions you get are drag and drops and some practical scenarios that will be very similar to some of the exercises and practical exercises that we'll do in this course. So you have those for the first 9-10 questions. And then when you go from there, you know, the rest are multiple choice. So I just got a message that I'm getting some bad echo. I don't know if it's on my side, your side, Ben.
Okay. All right. We'll pick you back up at another time then. We weren't getting any echo in here. So, okay. Thank you. Thank you. All right. Thanks, Andrew.
Not a problem.
All right. So what I'd like to do is just run through some simple questions here. And before we do that, what I want to do is I want to show you a technique that I'm going to recommend that you use. So we're going to go through and I don't know, maybe we'll do what time? So we'll do 20 questions tonight. What I would recommend is that we're going to do these individually. So I'm going to call your name. I want you to read the question out loud. Okay? And I know for some of you, you're going to get nervous. That's okay. I want you to read it out loud. All right? Read the question out loud. And then we want to, just like we drink here, we want to go from the bottoms up. So what does that mean? That means from D up to A. And why do I do that? That's because usually that helps people focus on not just picking the first answer they think is the right answer. So we're going to go from the bottoms up. Then we're going to go in and eliminate 2. Okay? Which gives us a 50-50. And then we're going to practice the WASTL method, which is the what answer sucks the least. Because some of these you'll be like, oh, it could be this, it could be that. But this is going to be the methodology that we're going to use, okay? And I would encourage you to play my little reindeer game here with me while we're doing it. And go ahead and you may want to just take out a piece of paper because you'll see that while people are reading it, you'll actually get done before they get done reading it out loud. And then you may have your own opinion, okay? All right, so let's go with Aditi. You're going to be my guinea pig here, okay? You answer the first one here. Go ahead, read it out loud. Yeah.
Which of the following is like traffic entering or leaving a network to look for only against expected location?
Yeah, read them out.
Statements, firewall, stateful firewall, snippers, IPS.
Okay, so now eliminate 2.
I guess. I just feel like the answer is snippers. I'm just guessing.
Okay, you're just gonna go right for the jugular and go for sniffer.
I don't even know.
Okay? Anybody got a different answer? Okay? I see people chatting in here with me. All right, so what I'm looking for here, and don't worry, Aditi, we're going to give you another chance. Don't worry. What I'm looking for here, if I'm a test taker, what I'm looking for is what are the context clues up top here? So we're looking for something that inspects traffic and looks for anomalies against any baselines that are out there. So this word anomalies to me means that these are things outside of the ordinary. Sniffers actually will inspect or actually just collect traffic. They collect traffic. So do they inspect? No, they don't inspect. They collect traffic. So it wouldn't be sniffers. The stateful and stateless firewalls, there is a difference between that. Basically, the way that it's read and how quickly it can be read, the packets as they're coming in, that is a difference between stateful and stateless. And then the intrusion protection system or intrusion prevention system, typically this is from a span port on a network and will look for anomalies on a network. So the answer in this particular case is an intrusion prevention system. So that's the answer that sucks the least in this particular case. Let's keep on going. We can come back to it later if you need to ask questions about it, but let's keep on going. Kelsey, we're going to go to you for this one.
Pete, a security administrator, wants to secure remote telnet services and devices to use the service over SSH. Which of the following port should Pete allow on the firewall by default? I would first 21 and oh geez. Is it? I know. I feel like I know what the answer is. 22.
So you're just gonna go
just
right for it.
Juggling, yeah.
Okay, right for it. So yes is the answer to that. Yes is the answer to that. So check it out. They're trying to throw you off immediately by saying telnet, which is 23. But they say they want to run the services or do port forwarding over SSH, which is 22. So then we know FTP is not it, SMTP is not it, and telnet is not it. The answer is 22. Good. Excellent job. Excellent job. Do not fall into the trap. Yeah.
So if it's trying to run telnet over SSH, then we'll follow 23. Either one that was by default. If it's trying to run telnet over SSH.
That's a good question. So with a tool like PuTTY, which is for SSH, what we can do is we can tell PuTTY to do this thing called port forwarding. And we tell PuTTY that says any traffic that's coming on port 23 forward it over to port 22. Because let's say telnet traffic is blocked, but we still want to send telnet traffic, we can put it over to 22.
Also, then just make it. Other port, right?
Yeah, it will move it over logically to the other port. But you still can do all the telnet services, but now it's running over SSH. Yep. And if you're not familiar with ports, then that may be a little bit confusing for you. But you absolutely 100% can port forward. Absolutely 100%. Let me give you an example. When I was at NASA, we had a development environment. We had a test environment, and we had a production environment. Well, as a chief engineer for a project, I could have access to the development environment, right? And I could push code up to the development environment, right? So what I would do is over port 1433, I would connect my Microsoft SQL on my machine up to the development environment. What I was able to find out is that I was blocked to go to the test SQL over 1433, and I was blocked to go to production, which would make sense. No reason I need to be pushing code out to a production app for NASA as an agency, right? And so what I ended up finding out, conveniently, is that when I was able to remote desktop up to the development machine, I could actually ping the test server from the development machine. Now, I couldn't get to it from my machine, right? Couldn't get to it from my machine, but I could ping the test machine from the development machine. So that means there's connectivity there. So what we would do is we would, through SSH, we would port forward any traffic from 1433 on dev over to the test server. So then we would do a little end around and get access to the test server. Yeah, it sure was a whole system. It was very convenient for a developer. Yeah, be able to test with the test data, which is usually a mirror image of production. But after a few weeks, we let it go. But just being able to do that and know that you can do that is pretty important. All right, good. Let's go with let's see if David, you want to go ahead and get involved here? Go ahead.
Matt, security wow, it's echoing. Discovered that a commonly used website is serving a script that redirects you to a questionable website. Which of the following solutions most likely prevents this from occurring? Well, let's see. Probably going to throw out. I'm going to throw out NIDS and anti-spam.
All right, so get rid of NIDS.
I don't know what NIDS is.
Okay, that's a network intrusion detection system.
Okay.
And spam is for email, so it doesn't say anything about email here. So yeah, I would totally agree with you with those two.
I think I'm going to go with the pop-up blocker.
With pop-up blocker? Okay. Anybody got a different answer? So this sounds like a pop-up blocker right here. Discovered a commonly used website is serving up a script that redirects users to a questionable website. So it doesn't launch a new window, it just redirects. And so with like PHP, for instance, if you're familiar with that programming language, you can just go HTTP redirect is the actual function, and then give it the URL that you want it to go to, and it'll actually redirect you to that URL. So if you hit my web page and an event is triggered, I send an HTTP redirect, I push you right to that web page automatically. And there's no pop-up that actually gets blocked there. They deliberately give you that 50-50 here, thinking that, you know what, people are going to pick one of these two. And I can totally see that. But it doesn't specifically say that there's another window that's launched or another browser that's launched here. So the answer is anti-malware.
So anti-malware on my machine would prevent that redirect?
Yes. Based off of CompTIA's logic. Now, whether or not your anti-malware will on your machine, that's a different story. But yes, based off of their logic, the prevention. And a pop-up blocker, would it actually prevent a redirect? Probably not. All right, let's see, who's next here? How about we go with Josh Nordstrom? We'll go with you next here, man.
Okay, which of the following protocols is most closely linked with SSL? Let's see. We got a bunch of initials. Well, most closely linked. I'm
So
gonna.
let me just hold on. Let me give you a chance here. What I would recommend to any of you that are on the phone or are online or in person here, what I would recommend is that when you see something like this type of one, or you see one that we've gone through where you have no flipping idea what an acronym stands for. I mean, I got a ton of these note cards here. I would recommend that you just go ahead right on the front. This is how I make a note card. And if you don't know what SNMP means, I'd make a note card. Big old font on the front. The back of it, what I would do is I would have 5 to 7 words that would describe SNMP. Because if you write a dissertation on the back of this index card, not only is your hand going to get tired, but you're probably not going to even read it in the future, right? So 5 to 7 words is what I would limit it to, and make sure that you try to do that. We had a guy come through here about 2 years ago who aced the Security Plus exam.
I mean, it's 750.
What's that?
I mean, it's 750, right?
I think he got the 900 or whatever the highest number. 900. 900. But he had, like, he would bring them in every class. He had about 500 note cards. And it turned out that, you know, after he wrote probably 450 of them down, that it just kind of beats it into your head. But there was 50 of them that he kept having to repetitively go back and try to memorize. So I'd say that hopefully that is something that you don't mind doing. And I would encourage you that if you are planning to take this test, you got to have something that you can look over and over again, because these acronyms, there is a ton of them. There's a ton of them. All right, I'm sorry to interrupt. So go ahead.
I guess the two I would throw out are SNMP and FTP.
Okay, you can read those two?
Yeah, I'm not sure what ICMP is, so I'm not going to throw it out. But my first reaction was TLS, because I have seen those together.
All right. So transport layer security does go with SSL, and that is the correct answer. Yes. So ICMP, this is the Internet Control Messaging Protocol, and typically that's what people call ping. Usually it's used for troubleshooting. Internet Control Messaging Protocol, or the ping command. Give him one ping. If you've ever done any troubleshooting of why something isn't on the internet, usually from my help desk days, many years ago, you'd ask, is the computer turned on? And you try not to laugh when you ask that. And then, can you ping it? Can I ping Google? Because if I can't ping Google, there's a problem, right? I immediately know that, hey, there's between me and the router, or the router, there's a problem. So this is one of the best troubleshooting things that's out there, ICMP. And for this exam, you just need to know ICMP typically means ping. Okay, for anybody that hasn't rolled their eyes at me yet, now's the chance to do it. If you're familiar with the way that submarines work, it's very similar to sonar, how you can detect objects based off of their distance away from you and the sound. So that's really where that comes from, the ping. Can I get it to respond to me with an echo reply? And typically, if it's on the same network, yeah, you can. Or if it's available with no firewalls. So the answer here is Bravo. Great job. Transport layer security. It is actually the replacement for SSL. And I believe SSL version 3.1 is actually using TLS now. Somebody can confirm that.
That's why they say TLS.
That's right. Yep. It's almost synonymous, but some of the older versions of it did not use TLS. But now the newer versions are coming out. It's still using the moniker of SSL, but it's actually underneath it with TLS. For something like that, it'll probably be a question like this, but I'll give you some more advanced questions as we move on. These are more beginner and intermediate questions that we're going to go through here. All right, let's go with, let's see here. How about Josh Sells? Josh, this one's for you. Oh, this is a good one. That's a good one. Josh, are you there? Josh, can you...
I think that he has trouble with that.
Oh, he's in. All right, well, let's pretend like you're reading it out loud. Oh, yeah. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Oh, you're just going to give the answer to everybody. Okay. All right, so you're going with A here. You're going with A. So let's just read this here. Which of the following types of data encryption would Jane, a security administrator, use if the MBR and the file systems needed to be included? Well, what in the heck? Isn't that the type of beer? A PBR, Pabst Blue Ribbon? No, that's not it. That's not it. So what is the MBR? That stands for the Master Boot Record, which as a operating system boots up. So as you power on the operating system, one of the first things that comes up is this Master Boot Record that tells the operating system or the computer to load the operating system. And that's how the Master Boot Record typically will work. So if the MBR and the file systems need to be included, what would we use here? Well, there's a couple of context clues that really give it away. And one of them here, it's definitely not dealing with anything with the database, so we could probably get rid of that, right? This seems like the MBR and the file system, it's probably not going to be individual files. So it's going to be probably one of the two disks here. And A is the correct answer. Good job. Good job. All right, let's go with Shane for the next one here. Shane?
What are the concerns regarding portable digital music devices in a corporate environment? B, they cause interference with wireless access points. C, can be used as recorders during a meeting. D, can be used as a USB removable drive. C, can distract users during various security training. What is body of all that?
All right, so let's get rid of 2.
So B and C could be, but they're probably not near as damaging as taking your home file system home.
You go B. We get rid of D and C. Go with B. B is the correct answer here. Yes. Good. So if you work over on post, usually USBs are disabled. You can't use any USBs. I've actually seen some of the tactical systems have epoxy in the USBs as well. But yeah, in corporate America, typically you can use USB, which comes in very handy if you have physical access to something. Because if you have physical access, usually you can get onto it. All right, Kincaid. This is a long one, man. You don't need to read it all out loud. But, you know.
I am.
Oh, you know what? Go ahead, man. You seem very confident.
Matt, a user, finds a flash drive in the parking lot and decides to see what's on it by using his company laptop. A few days later, Matt reports his laptop is running slow and unable to perform simple tasks. The security administrator noticed several unauthorized applications have been installed. CPU usage is unusually high, and a collection and screenshot of Matt's recent activities has been transmitted over the network. This is an example of which of the following: D, spyware; C, rootkit; B, logic bomb; A, backdoor. So I'm going to get rid of the logic bomb.
Let me interrupt you here. First off, you know, let's put our hands together for Kincaid here. I mean, shit, that was the best time that we've had so far. Great job. You woke my ass up. Great job, man. All right. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I'm going to get rid of B, logic bomb.
Okay, you're going to get rid of B, logic bomb.
Yeah, because it's not really dealing with the information. Logic bombs tend to be more damaging. I'm also going to get rid of spyware because they try to remain anonymous. Like they're trying to collect information, not really like do whatever's going on there. I am going to say it is a rootkit.
Okay. Anybody got a different answer? So that's the wrong answer right there.
Unfortunate.
Oh, yeah.
That's the wrong answer. So let's check it out. Now, I would agree with you to an extent. I would have probably been my 50-50 there, okay? So first off, Matt, what the hell are you doing? Finding a flash drive and then putting it into your laptop. That's the first problem that we have. He's an idiot. A few days later, Matt reports his laptop is running slow and unable to perform simple tasks. So several unauthorized applications have been installed, and up until this point, it's sniffing like it's a rootkit based off of the answers down here. Totally agree. CPU utilization is unusually high. But then when it's starting to send screenshots across the network, that becomes spyware. That becomes spyware. So D is the WASL right here from CompTIA. All right. That was a fantastic way to read that. I mean, you brought life to the conversation here.
I've got a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
So, it wouldn't be a back door with that. I mean, it gives, like, you plug in the flash drive, and that's the back door into the system that the user needed to get all that, and I guess use spyware. So I guess that was answering my question.
Usually with any type of backdoor, that's something that from a remote spot, you're jumping to. right? So if you're the bad guy over here and some backdoor has been installed on a device, you're able to remotely connect through that backdoor onto either a network or a machine. That's usually what the backdoor is. Whereas the spyware is actually sending information. That's the delta between the two. That's a good question. All right, let's go back with Dave. Or David, go ahead, David.
Which of the following is used to verify the identity of the sender of a signed email? Okay, so I'm going to eliminate the from field and the sender's IP. And then my answer is going to be the public key.
Public key?
Yes.
Okay. Anybody got a different answer here? You gonna go with private key? Okay. So that was the trick question. So David, you are correct here. You are correct. I'm going to do it every time, as I'm going to ask if somebody has a different answer, even though somebody may get the right answer. Let me just show you something here. That's right. Only you can see your privates. Only you. At least in the context of PKI. What's that? So only you can see your privates in a PKI scenario. Why? Well, if you show your privates, then everybody's got it. You go open kimono, hate to give you the visual there, but that means it's no longer private, right? And so when you're using PKI, which is public key infrastructure, that means that you can encrypt and sign emails with what's called a keyed pair. And that keyed pair has a public key and a private key. And everyone can have access to everyone's public keys, but only you can prevent forest fires. Only you, right? So only you can see your privates. So that's how we're going to remember that. And as we get into the PKI conversation, that'll come in handy. Moving forward. Good job, David. All right, let's go with, we'll do a couple more of these. How about Kelsey? Go ahead.
Social networking sites are used daily by the marketing team for promotional purposes. However, confidential company information, including product pictures, and potential partnerships have been inadvertently exposed to the public by dozens of employees using social networking sites. Which of the following is the best response to mitigate this threat with minimal company disruption? D, block access to social networking sites from the corporate network. C, implement a data loss prevention program to filter email. B, report each employee to human resources for termination for violation of security policies. Or A, mandate additional security awareness training for all employees. I would say get rid of, obviously, the report, because that's not accurate.
For termination, even.
For termination.
Right? I mean, that seems a little extreme.
Yeah.
Right? So far, so good. Let's look at some context clues here. You're going to hear me say that a lot, just because I think that it helps to decompose a little bit better. right? So let's look at the first sentence here. Used daily by the marketing team. So there's one of them here that if you select, which is probably the one that you're thinking of getting rid of or thinking of selecting, if it's used daily by the marketing team, then we can't select that as the answer. Which one is that?
The block access.
Yeah, so we can't do that because it's used daily by the marketing team. If we block access, the marketing team's not going to be able to market it, at least the social networking sense. All right, so now we got a 50-50. We got a fighting chance, right?
I was thinking more A, mandate additional security awareness.
Okay.
Because if you're, I mean, even if you're implementing data loss through emails, that's not going to really do much for just that team.
Okay. I totally agree with you. And it also gives you a context clue in the answer over here. The filtering email, it doesn't say anything up here about emails, right? So since CompTIA is a training organization, they are going to lean on any answer that has additional training in it. Give the people additional training, additional training, additional training. And so just like in Defense Industrial Base or the DoD as well, you're going to have to do security awareness training. If you mess up, you're going to have to do some additional security awareness training. Yeah. So essentially, that's a good way to think about it as you get prepared to take this test. Is that if this is one of the answers, I would definitely put it into my 50-50. And 9 times out of 10, I would say that I'm going to pick that. Even if it's something else that's shinier, I'm going to pick that answer. All right, Trenton, let's go with this one.
Which of the following uses both a public and private key? D, SHA, C, B, AES, A, RSA. I'm gonna get rid of C and D.
Get rid of C and D.
And I'm gonna guess RSA.
We'll go with RSA. All right, so C and D are both hashes. And no, a hash is not something you smoke. In this particular case, this is a message digest and a secure hashing algorithm. That's what those stand for. And then the advanced encryption standard is symmetric, which means that it just has a public key. And RSA is actually asymmetric, which means that you have both a public and a private key, or a key pair. And we're going to go over this on Tuesday. Actually, you're going to have a little bit of homework over the weekend as well to put you in a position to be able to answer something like this a little bit better. So A is the correct answer for this one. Good job, man. All right, so that pretty much takes us up to where we're going to be today. It's 8:30, 8:29. What I'm going to do is I'm going to give you guys some homework tonight. I'm going to send it out, and this will be a little bit different. If you haven't watched the videos already, I would recommend that you watch the videos as a kind of like a pre thing to do the homework. But then when you take a look at the homework, don't be overwhelmed with how much there is. It's going to take you a little bit of time to do the homework, but if you don't do the homework, you're going to have a difficult time keeping up with us as we continue to get deep in the bowels of this thing. Okay? Anybody got any questions before we let you go?
Yeah.
Anybody online want to say anything?
Are you going to send us slides tonight?
Yeah, I'll send the slides out. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
All right.
Ben, I put my Gmail address in there. Can you send me
Okay.
that?
Yeah. I'll send it to you right now.
Thank you, sir.
No problem. All right, until then, we'll see you next Tuesday. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Why would anybody want to read it?
He actually made it until the singer died. I don't know if I he remade it, now the money he gets from it.
Oh. What's left?
I think.
That's a global cost.
I think he was supposed to do cover with her. She died. But it was bigger death. I think it's better.
That lady in Zombie?
Yeah.
Yeah. As soon as you start hearing her sing, you want to turn it off.
By the way, introduce the echo and just turn down the gain on the microphone. So just the,
This one?
no,
This one.
that one, yeah, just turn
Turn
that
it
to the
down
left.
here?
Yeah. And what that will do is it'll change the sensitivity of the mic so it'll pick up less. And so it won't pick up from the speakers because they're hearing themselves talk through that.
Instead of you turning down the volume,
Yeah,
you can turn down the gain.
Yep, so it will pick up less and then.
See? I learned something new there. Thank you. That was easy. All right, feel free to reach out to me if you guys need any help with anything or need me to explain something. I'll be more than happy to try. I hope that I can, but if not, then I know where to find the answers. But we'll see you on Tuesday.
Okay, great.
All right, sounds great. See you, man. See ya.
This is way better in person.
I'm glad you're having a good time. Yeah, I think that it's usually what I'll do is if there's not too many people online, like here, there's a lot of people online, but if there's not too many people, I'll draw up there. That's why I got this, is because we've been having a lot of people online lately.
Better nothing, but I don't know, I just have a hard time watching.
Yeah.
Hour 16 of the day.